Welcome to Make It Last, helping you keep your legal ducks in a row and your nest egg secure, with your host, Victor Medina, an estate planning and elder law attorney and certified financial planner.
Everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. I am your host, Victor Medina. I'm excited to be here with you today. Now, if you're listening live, it's Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m., but if you're a podcast subscriber, it could be at any time that you're listening to this show, and regardless of when you're listening, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a loyal follower of the Make It Last radio show. I'm excited to do these shows, and by the response, it seems like you're all excited to hear them as well. And, if this is something that you enjoy, that you sit as part of your regular schedule, one of the nicest things you can do is go ahead and share that information with somebody that you like and care about, and give them the opportunity to learn from this as well. It's something that we do as a little gift to the community, something we do to help educate everybody. It's not my day job, but I do enjoy the opportunity to share a little bit of my knowledge wider with a greater group of people that I could ever see in my practice or in my businesses. So it is a great pleasure to serve you. I'm excited for this week's show because we're going to cover two topics. One is I'm going to cover three different kinds of retirement. Most people think about retirement as this monolithic thing, and it just is. But we're going to go a little deep into kind of what covers those, what it actually means, the different kinds of retirement. And then I'm also going to cover 5 signs that it might be time for in-home care. Now, I don't know how long the first segment's going to take for it. So if this goes too long, maybe we'll push that other segment off to the next show. But for the most part, I really did want to focus on 3 different kinds of retirement. Now, we got to set this up. We got to set it up the right way because, as I said, most people think about retirement as this sort of, big one concept defined only one way. And they've been defining it in their head that way since they were at working age, that retirement meant something. And that's kind of odd, right? So for most of human history, work was something that you did to survive, as long as you were capable. With the advent of the industrial age, the modern era, we instituted a process of schooling the young, right, to help train them for more sophisticated work to do for the rest of their lives. And so, while there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a farmer and farming your land to get food to survive, or building your home and renovating it and keeping it in good shape in order to have shelter, with the industrial age and the modern era, and people trained to do jobs. Okay, and part of that meant that the longer that people live, in part to all of the advances in medical science and just better taking care of yourself, the more likely it is that you're going to reach a phase in your life where you cannot physically or mentally do work anymore. Okay. In late 1800s, Germany was the first country that instituted this sort of old age social insurance program. It predates Social Security. And what it basically is a means to providing care for those that can no longer work to provide for themselves. Now, of course, back then, few were expected to actually rely on the program because the initial retirement age began at 70, and the life expectancy was only 45 years old. So it was an insurance program, but very few people were going to take advantage of it. And as we have gotten the opportunity to be better cared for, that our health improves, that our quality of life improves, retirement has fundamentally shifted. Okay, it's no longer a period of obsolescence where you're forced to retire because you are no longer a productive worker. It's now this other phase of life. And for many people, it can, take up 20-25% of their life when they're retiring. And so this post-work period of sort of planned leisure, which is the culmination of a lifetime of work and savings, is now this thing called retirement. And so as we have now shifted mentally, the idea of retirement instead of obsolescence, something that you are no longer serving the greater community, to one of leisure, people want to maximize that leisure time. Which is sometimes elongated, made much longer because of the advances in health. But it's also driven this weird idea that people ought to retire early in order to have more leisure years to enjoy. So you will see all the time how to retire at 55. Okay. But there's a trade-off, right? Because the trade-off is that you retire earlier and it's going to be necessary to have more saved because there are more years in retirement to pay for. And that sometimes comes with trade-offs, like spending less today, while you're working. And the kind of overarching theme was save as much as you can for as long as you can, and you'll be able to retire as early as possible, enjoy as long of a retirement period as you can. And that's been kind of the mantra for a while. For people who are working, particularly in jobs they don't like, the idea of having a long retirement of leisure is highly appealing. It's as a goal, something they want to go after. But paradoxically, people don't seem to enjoy it once it arrives. Now, the reason for that is that human beings are remarkably adaptable to circumstances. And so if you do any research on your own about the nature of happiness, happiness tends to revert to a stable level even after major life changes and life events. And the recipe for happiness is pretty straightforward, which is a lack of choices so that your options seem reasonable when you get there. Because again, you are mentally able to adapt to all kinds of circumstances. It's part of your survival skills. The phenomenon of being able to be happy in lots of different situations is something called hedonic adaptation. And it means that while people are working, a life of leisure sounds fantastic. But once you actually get there and you get to the life of leisure, it often becomes boring and routine and no longer enjoyable. In other words, you could continue to work towards a goal that you believe will bring you happiness, but sort of being on a walk towards the horizon. No matter how long you walk, you will never actually make forward progress because you are just going to adapt to this median level of happiness. And this is something that people are finding. They're finding as being sort of true. And as a result, there's a growing number of retirees who are seeking ways to stay active even after retirement. Whether you call it a new retirementality, okay, about what retirement actually means, but it's something beyond this active leisure lifestyle. Growing entrepreneurialism is significant in the senior category, people over 65. Okay, and only about half of retirees in a recent study planned not to work in retirement, and this trend is accelerating. So this transition to retirement may mean that you're moving away from a job or a career, especially if it's not enjoyable, but it doesn't necessarily mean retiring from work altogether. And that means that we should change our perspective away from this modern focus of saving early and aggressively towards retirement. Now, when I come back from this break, I'm going to talk to you about 3 different kinds of retirement, because whether you're there in retirement now or it's something on the horizon, this may change your perspective about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. All right, stick with us. We come back right after this quick break.
Just about every working American stays focused on the ultimate goal, retirement. But planning for it can come with a lot of uncertainty. Do I have adequate savings? Have I invested enough? Have I invested too much? What's the right thing to do? If you're one of the millions of Americans asking these questions, let financial expert Victor Medina help you make sense of it all. Victor is a certified financial planner and retirement income specialist who can help you set the strategy with a unique planning process that centers on you. By taking an in-depth look at your retirement timeline, goals you want to achieve, and what you have saved, Victor and his staff can help you figure out how to get the most out of retirement. Retirement is the biggest financial decision you will make. Putting the right plan in place and sticking to it is the smartest decision anyone can ever make. To learn more, visit Private Client Capital Group online at privateclientcapitalgroup.com and start down the path of securing your total wealth today.
All right, welcome back. If you've been joining us this whole time, or you're joining us late, we're talking about 3 different kinds of retirement. In the last segment, as a reminder, I kind of gave you the foundation for the concept of retirement and why this concept has been shifting over time. That the nature of our adaptability as humans to be happy leads both to a survival instinct while you're in a job that you hate, but also being bored and not really enjoying your life of leisure after retirement. And all of that has meant that our ideas around retirement has changed. Now, if you assume for a moment that reaching this moment of retirement doesn't actually mean the end of work, but merely the end of a current career or a current job, and maybe opening the door to a new type of work or a new type of way of getting significance, and potentially, by the way, one where it matters less how much you make, right? What you end up with are different kinds of retirement. Now, as a reminder, the traditional kind of retirement is one that we're mostly all familiar with, right? Which is to save early, save often, invest prudently for growth, and as soon as you are financially able, retire. And if you can grow your retirement portfolio fast enough, you can retire early. If not, you'll have the opportunity to retire in your 60s when Social Security becomes available and there's a floor on your income and your ability to live off of money. And that time in retirement is filled with leisure, perhaps engagement through volunteer work, but without anything coming back to you to help sustain you through that retirement financially. Okay. One alternative, though, is a form of semi-retirement where work is scaled back but not eliminated. I have a client who is just turning 70 and a half and is dealing with, kind of the distributions that have to come out of IRAs, but is actively working. And the best conversations occur around this idea of, well, when is retirement for you? And what does that mean? And his response is, well, I don't think there's any retirement in the future. I mean, they're going to have to kind of kick me out. In large part because he likes what he does. He feels valuable there. And there's really no hardship on him to continue to work. I wouldn't know what he would do with his time anyway. And what he scaled back into is sort of a form of semi-retirement. Okay. Now, that's with an existing job, but you can think about semi-retirement including starting a new business. One of the fastest growing franchise areas is in home health care. And most of the people that come into home health care are in retirement. And this kind of makes sense because they may have had an experience dealing with their parent. So they might have been in their 50s or 60s. Their parents were in their 80s or 90s, and they wanted to start a business to try to help other people. But that segment is, this new kind of entrepreneur who is an older, kind of close to retirement person, what we might think about a close to retirement, starting a new business. Starting a new career, taking the expertise that they have developed over years and becoming a consultant or doing part-time work in their current career, what they were doing prior. In essence, semi-retirement in this context essentially means retirement from the current full-time job, but not necessarily from any work. And in fact, some level of ongoing and paid work would be anticipated in this structure, which helps both sort of personal fulfillment and well-being and provides ways to make money, which can make it easier to either retire earlier or to have money throughout that period. Okay. Another type of retirement, and this would sort of be what the third one is engaging in a series of sort of temporary stepping away from work. You want to call it retirement, but basically it's a number of brief sabbaticals that occur with some regularity, with some planning for a limited period of time, after which you return back to the working world. Now, this could be in a different career, it could be in a different job, but the idea here is that the concept of retirement, the act of withdrawing from the working world, doesn't come when you are obsolete. It doesn't come at the end of the phase of life, but it is interspersed within your working life at times where you might be able to enjoy these breaks a little bit more, where what you do in that activity is not necessarily driven by how well your body's holding up and whether you're older. Now, granted, if you're already older, you may not be able to plan for this type of retirement. But if you're, listening to this and you are just turning 50, you might think about introducing this kind of a retirement because you're essentially introducing transition between careers. Now, you got to be deliberate about this because one of the things that older folks face is a working environment, workplace definition that says as you get older and get more expensive, you may not be as attractive as a candidate coming in. And so that might mean planning for starting your own business or planning for taking a lower salary or planning for making a career shift where your age is not, driving whether or not somebody hires you or what it is that you do. Okay. But the concept here is that the retirement happens a little bit more frequently. You might get 5 or 6 of them over the course of your life expectancy, and it could be pure leisure. It could be coupled with the second type of retirement where you're kind of doing this part-time work and leisure where you're scaling back for a period of time and then ramping back up. And so whether it's a continuation of one career all the way through or 5 or 6 different careers with longer sort of these mini retirements, you can have that as an option kind of going through your career as what you plan. And the reason why it's important to distinguish amongst these different kinds of retirement is in large part because saving for them or marrying those goals, life goals, with your financial goals takes a different approach. Our concept about saving with long-term investing and not touching the money and passive and compounded growth is really a design for traditional retirement. Because it means that you need to get this big amount of money that will last you through your retirement with no other income, maybe Social Security. And that's the goal, to grow that as large as possible. But if you shift into one of these other kinds of retirements, what happens is that you don't have to generate this big pile, not nearly as all, right? So if your leisure periods are going to be shorter and temporary, followed by more earning time, which continues at a later age, the reality is that you never need as much for retirement savings, right? It only peaks to cover the kind of last decade of your life where work is just no longer feasible, that you're physically and mentally not capable of working. And so when you start to kind of run the money numbers behind this, it drastically reduces the required savings if you're going to do some form of semi-retirement or periodic retirement, because your ability to work, your human capital, is actually worth a ton as a retirement asset. That you can both work and save at various stages means that the need to have a bunch of this money goes way down. Your withdrawal rate that is safe goes way down, right? Because your work in what we would call traditional retirement will defray the need for required savings, okay? Said another way, using those old 4% safe withdrawal rates, that old research, every $10,000 a year of work in a state of semi-retirement, okay, or mini retirement, reduces the need for retirement savings $250,000. Okay, so just earning $20,000 a year to supplement $40,000 a year of a living expense or a withdrawal goal cuts the required retirement savings by $500,000. And so that should be eye-opening to you, right? This idea that continuing to work or working later actually reduces the need for retirement savings should open your eyes to this as an actual financial planning tool that you can plan for these areas. $10,000 a year is not a significant amount of money to generate in retirement. You can do that with a traditional part-time job. $20,000, maybe a little bit more difficult, but certainly not the amount that you would be making at the end of your career as a professional. Okay. Now, in most of these scenarios, you're still going to have some period where you don't work at all and need to supplement your Social Security with all of these savings, but it's a shorter duration. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope I'm introducing for you new ideas on what retirement is so that you don't have to look at this big scary thing and, that your measure against that big scary thing means success or failure for what the rest of your life means. I hope that's not too grand of a concept. In either circumstance, I would be remiss if I did not remind you that one of the best ways that you can plan for this is to work with an advisor who is a planner. It doesn't serve you to work with somebody that's a product specialist. What you need, and we use this analogy a lot in my practices, you need a pilot for the plane. You don't need a travel agent selling you a ticket. You want to get to Hawaii, hire a pilot. Because the pilot can figure out how to get there even when life changes, the weather patterns or what else is going on, emergencies on the plane, things like that. Travel agent can't do that. And so we want somebody who's a planner. All right, when we come back, we'll have time for a very brief segment talking about 5 signs, whether or not it's time for in-home care. And if you have any questions about this segment, about the retirement, types of retirement, go ahead and drop us a line. Shout us with an email, send us a comment on the website, and let us know how we can better answer your questions. So when we come back, 5 signs that it might be time for in-home care. And when we come back on Make It Last, be right back.
As you get older, there are so many decisions to make around your legal, financial, and tax planning needs. Searching for the right people who you can trust and getting them all on the same page can be frustrating and exhausting. Turns out, now there's a better way. Medina Law Group is the only place where you can secure your total wealth with a one-stop shop for your estate, retirement, and tax planning needs. With over 15 years of experience and more financial credentials than you can shake a stick at, Victor Medina and his team offer a way to cover all of your planning needs under one roof. Whether you're concerned about getting your ducks in a row or securing your nest egg or both, Medina Law Group can give you the peace of mind you deserve to make sure you have all the angles covered with best-in-class planning. Call the experienced professionals at Medina Law Group at 609-818-0068 to learn more, including your chance to schedule a free consultation. You can also visit MedinaLawGroup.com to learn more about protecting your assets and the Medina Law Group team. For peace of mind and a solid foundation, contact Medina Law Group today.
Hey, welcome back to Make It Last. We spent the first 2 segments talking about 3 different kinds of retirement. And, while we were in commercial break, it occurred to me that I didn't cover something that I want to cover briefly, which is, a lot of this is dependent on your working capital being consistent all the way through, right? Or the ability to engage in your working capital being consistent all the way through. One of the things that can injure that, of course, is health concerns, disability, and those kinds of restrictions. So in a setup in which you are planning for semi or mini retirements or multiple mini retirements, insuring against your disability is a necessary component of making that work. Because if you cannot leverage your human capital, it turns out that this won't work. This won't work because you won't have enough if you can't generate for somewhere else. And so disability insurance is kind of a necessary component of that. Now, listen, we don't have a lot of time for this last segment, so I'm going to fly through these. But as you know, a big component of what we do every day is help people with elder care planning. When they get older and they get sicker, the idea that they might need help along the way is part of the intersection between legal and financial planning that we do all the time for our clients. And there are 5 signs that we have noticed over time that could affect whether or not you should consider in-home care. Whether you're the spouse that's taking care of somebody, whether you're still with it enough to make this decision on your own, or if you are a child who is both a loved one and a caregiver. These are 5 things to look out for. Okay. One of them is one of those things that we sometimes brush underneath the rug because we just accept it as a condition of growing older. But as you get new prescriptions or changes in medication, that can lead to a need for in-home care because medications and dosing of them can be confusing, especially if you're assigned to take more than 1 or 2. Okay. On average, people over 65 fill about 14 prescriptions per year, and that's a lot of pills to keep track of. If you add for that the errors of medication that occur during a transition, right, especially if you spend time in a hospital, the idea that you might need help with that now becomes a reality. And so if you're seeing an increase in prescription medications and a change in the dosage, you might consider in-home care, because people who are residential nurses are often trained in reconciling the medication you have to take and will work with you to make sure that you're on the right track. And that could be a shorter duration of in-home care, but might be a need there. Second one has to do with the fear of falling or having a number of recent falls. It is one of the top reasons for hospitalization of the elderly. In fact, the fear of falling is one of the main contributors to the increase of the fall risk. So people want to remain independent and stay in their homes as long as possible, but that can often come with trouble with balance and fall risks, especially if your home is not set up to kind of deal with that. And it can be hard if you're a loved one, both a spouse or a child, to determine what exercises will benefit the person who has a fall risk. So people who are in-home physical therapists can create an exercise plan that will target health concerns with balance right head on, and giving you strategies to conquer fears, and kind of going through the home like an occupational therapist that will help you kind of figure out how to stay safe in your home. Again, another use of in-home care, not long-term, could be a short-term. People who have problems with mobility, and when that mobility concern interferes with everyday activities like laundry and cooking and things like that. So people who are home health care aides can perform some of that with you. Physical therapists, occupational therapists can help improve strength so that you can continue to do and manage pain on your own, do more on your own, manage the pain, manage the symptoms. And so that would be another one. Number 4 would be, and this is huge right now, memory problems, things that are dealing with behavior changes that might be linked to cognitive issues. Dementia in elderly people is incredibly common, whether it's young or old, on the 70 side or on the 90 side. And with it can come confusion, irritability, frustration, the inability to manage medications, performing the activities of daily living. So bringing in help can stabilize the downward decline. Just kind of can help flatten that out. And so whether it's that or the 5th thing, which is assistance with daily monitoring, if you have unstable vital signs, things like that, bringing in somebody on a regular basis can actually lengthen the quality of their life, if not lengthen their life at all, overall, because if you're able to bring in help, the rate of decline kind of flattens out as a curve. It flattens out because you're getting the help that allows you to stay healthier for a longer period of time. And that last component, specifically one where someone is, requiring more help because of the dementia or cognitive issues, is one that people delay on too long, in my experience, because they don't want to admit defeat, because they think that it's a part of their regular obligations as a spouse or a child to provide on their own. But we've seen time and time again that when people bring in help, not only is the sick person's life better, but the healthy caregiver's life improves. They get to be a spouse or a child and not spouse, child plus home health care aide. And that improves their relationship and improves their happiness in dealing with this person that has increased needs. And so I would urge you that if you're spotting some of these, consider in-home care. It is really affordable, especially compared with the cost of assisted living or nursing care. If that is something that comes down the road, it's easier to spend the cheap money. Small problem, small solution, big problem, big expensive solution, and consider in-home care as you get to that point in time. Well, we have run out of time for the show for this week. I want to thank you for joining us. Again, if this is a show that you like and enjoy, I urge you to share it with your friends. Either send them the link to the podcast, ask them to listen in on Saturday mornings, or listen on the website as a download or a stream. We are open to taking all of your suggestions for show ideas. So if you want to send that to feedback@makeitlastradio.com, go ahead and do that. If you're interested in any of our services, certainly you can look us up directly, especially if you're considering these kind of retirements and want to talk to a planner about that. In any event, I want to thank you for joining us this Saturday morning, or joining us wherever you are listening to this podcast. We will be back next Saturday with Make It Last, helping you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest secure. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
The foregoing content reflects the opinions of Medina Law Group, LLC and Private Client Capital Group, LLC, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal strategy. There is no guarantee that the strategies, statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs.